Hi guys, this is Miss Anderson, and we are about to go over chapter 4, step-by-step process. And so I'll let you in just on a little secret. We're going to continue reading the book, chapter 4, but our step-by-step process is going to be a little different, okay? All right, here we go. Let's read. Now you know what makes a research paper effective. You know what the format is. Now it is time to get started and get writing once and for all. It is time for you to put everything together so that you know what to expect and how to make it work for you. Let us go over those key points that you will need to consider to ensure that your paper is well polished and ready to be presented right on time every time. Brainstorming and researching the topics. You will begin with the brainstorming and research stage. Think about all of the topics within the scope of what you are going to be researching. Write down all of the ones that are interesting, and take some time looking into them. This is the process that you saw in the last chapter to provide you with everything that you need to make an effective research question. So that is, I'm guessing he's saying do some pre-research, okay? So thinking about our topic, which is our service area, okay? And then brainstorming and then doing some pre-research in order to develop our research question. Stating the thesis. When you have your research question chosen out, it is time to state your thesis. Your thesis statement will summarize what your point is that you are trying to prove. It will also briefly support the reason that you think this way. It is like your roadmap to figure out what will be found within the paper. Start by writing out your thesis before you really begin to outline your paper. This will help you figure out what the structure for the rest of your paper will look like. We're going to go over your thesis in the classroom. Have no fear. A solid thesis statement will make a blend out of the following points to create 1 or 2 sentences about your paper. It must state the topic, your thesis. It must state what you think about the topic, okay? It must offer support for your thoughts on the topic. It should offer an objection to your thought if applicable. It should offer a counter argument to the objection that supports your topic. So we're going to go with those first 3 bullets there, okay? So your thesis statement must support your topic. It's going to give an idea of what you think about that topic, and it's going to offer some support, okay? And I'm going to use the example of, I've decided I was trying to choose between which organizations to use as my example as I am modeling and explaining in class. And I think I'm going to use the environmental services. Some of our students are doing their service hours with our environmental services. And so I'm going to use them as my example, okay? So that you can generate your ideas for your particular area of research. For example, you may have a structure that looks something like this. While an objection to, I'm going to skip that. Go into the next page, okay? This is quite simple to write out when you follow this particular format, adjusting for grammar. You will find that it is easier than ever to get started and moving with everything. So I'm going to model out writing your thesis statement in class. Drafting the outline. When it comes to drafting your outline, you will want to start vague. Write out what all of your sections and subsections will be and start to organize it. You should now have your thesis statement with your supporting evidence, and that is great. You want to make sure that you know what you're doing and how you are doing it. However, you must also make sure that you are figuring out the right way in which you can fill in the blanks as well. Outline your arguments. Work on adding anything that you think is relevant during this stage. And make sure that you provide everything that you think you will need during this stage. This should involve you starting an outline with what you think about your research and putting it in order and preparing it. Refining your outline. So your outline is a living, fluid document, okay? You start with your draft, and then as you continue doing research and thinking and brainstorming, your outline it may possibly change. With all of your outline written out, it is time for you to start parsing it down. If it is not directly relevant to the thesis or does not help you further your paper, cut it out. Start putting all of your writing and outlining into a logical sequence that will help you figure out how to structure everything and prepare to get started with your paper. You should be able to glance over your outline and have a direction on where you will be going with proper writing. You want to begin putting it in the right format, which you have been handed several times at this point in the book. Keep in mind that your outline does not lock you down. It should be your guide. But if you need to veer off from it sometimes, that is okay. As long as you are able to keep everything in line with answering your research question and you can justify the inclusion of something as support, then do so. It will be worth it in the long run. Mapping out your notes. When you have the general format down, or if you are struggling to make sure that your outline actually is on track, you may want to make use of a map. You can visually display the path of your paper if you go through the use of a mind map, which will help you see how everything relates together. If you are still unsure about some points in your paper, try mapping it out. Start with your topic in the center and then make lines off from your topic for each of your key argument points. Then put in all of your supporting evidence that you have. If at the end of the process you have evidence or support that does not naturally fit in anywhere, eliminate it. It was not necessary or essential to proving your point, so do not waste your time with it. I have a template that I have used before in the past with my students' essay writing. And so what we mean by outline or mind map is simply graphic organizer. That's the word that you've heard before. A graphic organizer lets you visually be able to see and to be able to display all of your outline mapped out, okay? But we're going to just do a regular outline. I think as seniors, you should be able to do a regular outline. And then if you need a graphic organizer or a template or a mind map, then please let me know, okay? Avoiding writer's block. If you find that you are stuck with writer's block, every writer's worst nightmare, try considering a few tips that you can use to jumpstart the process. First, start with setting blocks of time for yourself. So carve out time for you to do nothing but write. So when are you going to write? Is it early on a Saturday morning, early on a Sunday morning, or late at night when everyone has gone to bed? Only you can decide that. For me, I'm an early bird. I love to get up at the crack of dawn, even before the sun comes up, take my shower, have me a cup of coffee and maybe a snack and get started. That is my time for reading and writing. But you choose the time of day that is good for you, okay? Perhaps start small by dedicating yourself to writing for just 5 minutes. I'm going to increase that to maybe about 15 minutes, okay? And once you start writing, you're going to naturally keep going, okay? So that's why I don't really want to put a limit on, I guess what he's trying to say is that don't try to at first sit down for like hours and hours, just start small. Okay, we'll go with that. Start small. Tell yourself that you cannot get up until you have finished writing for those 5 minutes, and then push the point. Remember when I talked about rewarding yourself? So when you sit down to write, give yourself a reward after that. You know what I mean? That way you have something to look forward to as you go into writing. So I don't like to punish myself or force myself to sit down to do something. I prefer to reward myself for doing something. So it's all in perspective, okay? Whatever works for you. Make sure that you write without stopping to think about what you are writing. You can edit it the second pass around. Just get out your writing and get it out as quickly as you can. This is great to make sure that you are able to properly get the words out, sorry. Once they are on paper, editing them is so much easier. Another common tip is to even neglect typos as you write. See, the way that sentence could have been written is, another common tip is to neglect typos as you type. Leave out the word even. And then it should have been said, typos can distract you and make you go back, forgetting the train of thought that you were on in the first place. Now, none of you have that problem because you don't you don't go back and recheck your work, okay? So an experienced writer, which is what you are becoming, they proofread as they write. And what he's saying is, don't worry about proofreading on your first try. Just go ahead and get the words on paper. Well, that's good, and there's positive and negatives to that, okay? The positive is that you're getting your thoughts out on paper, which is great. But the negative is, if you have not developed the stamina and the structure and the order and self-discipline to go back and revise and edit, then you never do. So now you just have a hot mess, you know? All right. Write first and polish it up later. After all, your documents will have plenty of red and blue squiggly lines to catch your attention if there are any mistakes. Just get writing. I'm going to leave that alone. That's the best way that you can avoid the trap of writer's block. It does not have to be perfect. It does not even have to be good or grammatically correct at this stage. It just has to be, and from there you can polish it up. Let's keep going. The first draft. The first draft of your document will be made while you make use of the above ideas. Just get it done and get it out there. It is incredibly rare for you to have a document that is entirely perfect the first time around. You must make sure to give credence to that and make it a point to figure out how to best fix anything that has problems. I agree with that. Remember, you do not have to write your paper in order. It can help to do so, but if you have a well-designed outline, you should be able to jump around if that is easier for you. I wholeheartedly agree with that. You may find that one area in your paper is particularly inspiring to you, like your method section, and that is just fine. You can head over to that area and get writing. You can make it neater later. Just get it out there and be proud of yourself. Because remember, it all has to flow. So you have to proofread again and again and again and again. That first draft is the hardest part. Once you have it, the polishing up of the document will be far easier than anything else. Yes, that's true if you're used to proofreading. If you're not, then that's going to be a struggle for you, which is fine because you're learning. All you have to do is begin and make good use out of it. Citing and listing your references. As a note, when you are doing your first draft, it can be distracting to write out all of your citations as you go. Instead, leave yourself a note either in the document's note-taking capabilities or on the side for you if you are not sure what it is that you need, or if you are in the flow of writing and do not want to be interrupted. Highlight any references and note the source briefly here. You can fill out the citations later, but they will need to get done. And I have a method for us to do your citations, okay? Keep in mind that if you do not add citations, you will be plagiarizing. I can spot plagiarizing easily, just like you can spot candy, okay? I know what's your voice and what's not your voice, okay? So please don't plagiarize. Let's learn how to properly cite, okay? You must make sure that you give credit where credit is due. And if you use something in your paper, you must provide that, meaning citations. In particular, you will need to cite something when you quote it, you are generally paraphrasing something that someone else wrote, any data that is added to your paper, any images or graphs or charts that you use, anything that is coming from someone else, somewhere else, and someone else has to be cited. Sometimes you do not need a source at all if you are using common knowledge. There is no reason to cite it. For example, you do not need to provide citations to the concept that there are pyramids in Egypt. That is common knowledge. However, if you get information about how people built them, you will probably want to cite that. When you are citing your sources, make sure that you are addressing the guide for the style that is particular to your paper or your field. For example, most psychology papers will be cited in APA format. Other social sciences also usually prefer this method, including sociology, political science, and education. When it comes to humanities, you will most likely need to make use of the MLA format. Science has its own expectations for citations, as do medical journals. You will need to look at what is standard for your particular subject and seek out that style guide to make sure you are in fact citing everything appropriately. And I'm going to do most of that work for you, the MLA, because it's not, you're going to get a good hefty dose of it in college, so I don't need to burden you with it now. So I'm going to have the format done for you. Review your first draft. Next comes reviewing your first draft. Take some time and go over your paper, usually a day or two after your first draft was completed. You want to step away from your writing and then come back to it with fresh eyes. This gives you time to let go of the information in your mind so that you can read it with fresh eyes that will catch any of the typos that may be present within it. Go over it and start to polish it up. That's called proofreading. You will likely have plenty of polishing up to do if your first draft was nothing but rushing through everything to get it on paper. But that is okay. Just take some time and feel proud of yourself for accomplishing such a monumental feat. And proofreading and revising is a monumental feat, and it is extremely satisfying when you have a well-written paper, okay? Extremely satisfying. Check for typos, flow, continuity, and general structure. Fact check everything you think you may have gotten wrong as well. Peer reviews. Though you will not always have the opportunity to do this, make use of a peer reviewer when possible. We are going to do some peer reviews. You should be doing this on your own, okay? They will be able to help put fresh eyes onto your paper, and that can help you figure out if there are any particular weaknesses that need to be ironed out in order to get everything in working order. Make sure that you do not get too upset or offended if someone has comments that you did not expect. On the flip side of that, please make sure you are being objective when you are reviewing someone else's paper, and you are being empathetic when you give your suggestions and your opinions. This is part of the polishing process. Do not forget, coal turns into diamond when under the highest pressure. And likewise, a well-scrutinized paper is likely to be far better formatted and written than one that has only been written and looked over once before submitting it. Finalizing the paper. After the peer review is complete, go over and make any of the recommended changes if you find that they make sense. Take the feedback graciously and make sure that you take it all into consideration to figure out if it is right for you or not. Make sure that you take advantage of this process and work through it to the best of your ability. This is the last stage of any polishing that you are going to do. After you have finished making any of the edits that you have been suggested to by your peer reviewer, considering having them make a final read through of your paper to determine if any of the concerns were addressed. If so, move on to the last step. If not, head back and start the review stage again. So I'm going to offer that you read your research paper to your parents or read it to an adult. Not give it to them, but read it to them. Okay? And then allow them to give you feedback. Proofreading and time to spare. When your paper is complete, it is time for one final proofread. You can read it through yourself, or you can make use of a grammar scanner app on your computer if you want something else to give it one last check. And we're going to go over Grammarly, which is a grammar checking app. And I think some of you may be using it, but I am going to introduce you to it because it's used commonly in college. So as you are preparing for college, you want to get support. It's a support mechanism, okay? If you do make use of a grammar scanner, keep in mind that they are not infallible, meaning they often make mistakes, and they do make mistakes. Oh. And if you blindly follow the advice of them, you will likely have errors, big errors. Make sure that you do all of this with plenty of time to spare. You should not feel rushed at all when you go through this process, and you should feel like you can, in fact, properly get through everything without a problem. Aim to be done with this stage 2 to 3 days prior to your due date. This gives you plenty of leeway in case something goes wrong and you may possibly need to change something. All right, that ends chapter 4. So he gave us his suggested step-by-step process. So let me give you our step-by-step process, okay? All right, so we are going to start with 8 steps, okay? And so brainstorming and researching. So when we get in the classroom together, and this is your generating your research question, okay? So most all of these things I'm going to say we're going to do in class together. That's why, again, I keep harping on attendance. If you're not there, it's going to make it a challenge for you to get this information, okay? You're going to have to rely on your peers. And for me to do reteaching, then I'm going to need to do it after school, okay? Because once I go over the information, I'm done with teaching it. I can't teach it 5 days in a row, okay? We have a block class where we have 90 minutes to get work and instruction done, okay? So you must be there. Step number 3, research and gather information, okay? So once you have defined your research question, then you're going to go out and you're going to do some research. You're going to start your reference list then and make a note as you're going out and researching. You'll find websites, because I have a couple of good websites that I was looking into, Homeless, that had good graphs and good statistics and stuff to add to your paper. So I even have a source already for you. So we're going to take some time to do some research, gather some information, create our works cited list, and then move into our data collection. That's our methodology. What type of methods are you going to use? A survey, and I'm excited about this part, okay? So I don't want to go too deep into it. I just want to give you the steps here. Organize and create our outline. Then we're going to write our first draft. Then we're going to go back, proofread it, revise it, and review it. And then we're going to finalize it. And then for us, publishing is printing it. Because remember, this is your research paper is going into your portfolio, okay? So I feel like this has been a long video. I'm not sure, but go ahead and add these 8 writing steps to your notes, okay? Pause the video, add them to your notes, and so we can move on to chapter 5. We are almost finished with the book. Thanks, guys.